German police say officials are uncertain they've detained the correct suspect over the deadly terror attack in Berlin, with the armed terrorist potentially still at large. Security in Europe is once again being questioned as Germany and other European states have been warned of potential terror attacks. And the Russian ambassador to Turkey is shot dead in Ankara, just a day before a key talk on Syria between Russia, Turkey and Iran. Thanks for joining us this afternoon on RT International Live from Moscow. I'm Daniel Hawkins. We start with Germany this hour, where the country's Interior Minister Thomas de Maizière has said the arrested suspect over the deadly terror attack in Berlin is an asylum seeker of Pakistani origin. On Monday, a truck rammed into a Christmas market in a main square in the capital, killing 12 people and injuring almost 50 others in what's been confirmed as an act of terror.
The person arrested yesterday is from Pakistan. He entered our country on December 31st in 2015. In February, he arrived in Berlin. The review process of his temporary asylum has not been completed. This person is not on the monitoring list of our intelligence services for those connected to terrorists.
Well, Berlin's police chief, though, is now reporting that officials are uncertain whether they have the correct suspect in relation to the deadly Berlin attack.
The investigation is still going on. We can't confirm yet that he's the driver.
Well, for more on the German reaction, let's cross live to Berlin and RT's Peter Oliver on the latest there. Peter, what's the latest that we know so far?
Well, we've just heard from Germany's top federal prosecutor and other senior law enforcement representatives. That prosecutor saying that we have to get used to the idea he may not have carried out this attack. He was talking about the 23-year-old Pakistani man who had been taken into custody and was the main suspect, believed to have driven that truck into those people at the Christmas market here in Berlin on Monday evening. Briefly, we also heard from the police president here in Berlin, who defended a lack of concrete barriers being erected around Christmas markets, saying 100% safety was not possible, and providing those barriers wouldn't have helped anywhere. Now, what we have heard from Angela Merkel, the German Chancellor, on Tuesday is her confirm that this was an act of terror, also saying that if it was an act of terror that was carried out by an asylum seeker, by somebody who had come to the country for help, that it would be a real problem. It would have been even more devastating than it already is.
I know that it would be particularly difficult for us all to endure if this act was committed by a person who asked for protection and asylum in Germany.
Well, shortly before the terror attack took place on Monday evening, Angela Merkel had been giving a speech where she defended her policy on welcoming refugees to Germany.
Some people need more time to be convinced, and some don't even listen. It is also part of the diversity of opinions. In this case, you just have to continue your path. If it crosses the limit, the state has to intervene at some point and say, our lives consist of us living with our diversity, and diversity makes us richer rather than poorer.
Well, the German Chancellor has been facing a backlash from politicians from all across the political spectrum here in Germany. We've heard from the Alternative for Germany MEP, one of their MEPs saying that those 12 people that were killed here in Berlin were Merkel's dead. Also from among her allies as well, one of her own coalition referring to the need to redesign the entire refugee system, as well as one of her own party members saying that the country was in a state of war at the moment. There's also been critics of the refugee policy coming from abroad, with Marine Le Pen, the leader of the far-right Front National in France, chipping in and giving her opinion.
The emotion is there. The outrage is very strong. How many massacres and deaths will be necessary for our governments to stop bringing huge numbers of migrants into our countries without borders, when we know for sure terrorist Islamists are among them?
To recap the latest news, the main suspect, a 23-year-old Pakistani man, remains in custody, but we're hearing from police that they're now saying that he denies the charges, that he was the one driving that truck, and they say that the actual perpetrator, if he isn't the actual perpetrator, could still be at large, and we're being told here in Berlin to be vigilant.
Indeed, no doubt. You'll be keeping us up to date on all the developments as they come in. RT's Peter Oliver there bringing us the latest. Well, eyewitnesses claim the truck showed no signs of slowing down and no real police presence was at the scene when the attack took place.
It happened so fast there was nothing we could do to stop it, and if we tried to stop it we would have been crushed. Definitely looked deliberate. My girlfriend said it appeared that the truck was not stopping. There was no attempt to stop it. It was careering in, definitely bashing into the stalls where people would be facing the stalls, and then carried on through. There was no particular police around at the time because everybody was happy. It just carried on through. I think it was stopped by just bits of scenery and truck inside it. So, not truck inside it, sorry, bits of scenery and bits of stalls inside the truck. So it appeared to be stopped just outside the market, having looped through the edge. There was no attempt. When you see a truck, when it's braking, the cab divs down, doesn't it? But when it's not braking, it carries on up. And it didn't look like it was stopping. There was no brake sounds. It was clearly going straight on through. So whether it was a driver who was just drunk and going through, or whether it was lost control of the vehicle, or whether it was a deliberate attempt, I can't tell you, but there was no attempt to stop that we could see. It was definitely carrying on.
Terror has no borders. It's like you cannot be safe anywhere. I mean, I come from a destroyed place, and I'm here to witness this, and like, I feel like death is following you everywhere. It's not easy.
Actually, we didn't know what happened first. We tried to ask people, and nobody knew, actually, because they were in shock. There are people like running this way. We tried to go the opposite way to see what happened, and we didn't actually see it as it was running through people, but we saw it parking. It was like a Scania truck. Yeah, it was a big one, and the glass was broken, and the windshield was smashed.
Well, comparisons have been drawn between the incident in Berlin and the massacre which happened in the French city of Nice. The attackers used trucks to deliberately plough through crowds, and both took place in busy areas full of tourists and foreigners. But despite calls to take greater precautions to prevent this type of attack, we've seen it repeated at the Christmas market in the German capital. Well, many are now questioning the continued failings of security in Europe. RT's Anastasia Churkina visited a Christmas market in London, where there was also a lack of police presence.
Certainly lots of questions being asked about the state of security in Europe yet again following this latest terrorist attack in Germany. Now, we have to, of course, keep in mind that just in November, we saw the U.S. Most recently update its Europe travel alert, where the United States was warning that ISIS and its affiliates are continuing to plan attacks in Europe. They said that the risk was heightened, and they were calling for cautiousness when it comes to holiday festivals, markets, and other public places. We also, of course, have to remember that the attacks that took place in Germany this year alone have also been raising lots of questions about whether or not lessons have in fact been learned. Well, in addition, we also have to keep in mind that earlier this month, Europol, Europe's law enforcement agency, did warn that ISIS is likely to carry out more terrorist attacks in Europe.
This is the most serious terrorist threat we've faced in Europe for at least a decade. And even in the last 6 months, I think, we're faced by a determined new strategy by Islamic State to take the fight to Europe, to our streets, with a more aggressive form of international terrorism.
So we've seen all of these red flags and warnings, yet somehow this attack was in fact possible. Now, when it comes to the UK, we do know that the police here have been talking about stepping up their game, reviewing their policies. But we have to say that earlier today we went to several tourist spots as well as several Christmas markets to see whether or not there are any visible signs of change. And we have to say that there was no police presence, there were no metal detectors, there was nothing along the lines of security at a few Christmas markets that we visited here in London, so it really did look like it was just simply business as usual.
Let's cross live now to Gerald Vanemans. He's a member of the European Parliament from Belgium. Thanks for joining us today on RT Internationals. The police are now saying that the arrested man might not actually be the attacker. Certainly he's denying any involvement in that. It's taken them quite a while to establish that, hasn't it? And indeed the whole thing is being labelled a failing by the security forces. Is that a bit harsh criticism, do you think?
Well, I'm not criticizing the police and the intelligence forces that have lots of things to do in these severe days, and so it's not now the time to criticize them. Let them do their job, and let's hope they'll find soon the guy who did this.
Well, Germany is also now saying they need greater security measures, more powers to police, to security forces. Surely this could have been in place already. Why weren't these measures put in place in view of previous attacks?
Well, what Germany especially needs is another kind of politicians. That is the problem. We have now 319 deaths since Charlie Hebdo due to Islamic violence in Europe alone. So we should, the real Donald Trump this morning twittered, we should change the way we think. We should change thinking about Islamic presence in Europe and about taking in more Islam people from all over the world. That is what we should do, and we should change politicians, change Madam Merkel, change those who are actually politically responsible for what happened yesterday.
And speaking of Angela Merkel, of course, this attack has triggered a backlash in Germany over the country's refugee policy. Some are saying Merkel's policy has completely failed, the refugee policy. Now, the German elections are coming up next year already. What sort of ramifications are you expecting as a result for Angela Merkel and her party?
Well, I hope the Germans will see now that the politics of open borders and all the other Europeans that live in the European Union that opened our borders, I hope that people will see that only parties with strong signals towards what should happen, parties like ours, like Marine Le Pen's, like the AfD in Germany specifically, that these parties should be much stronger next year so that much stronger measures could be taken.
Indeed, and just speaking of the authorities and the media's reaction to it as well, the authorities took some time announcing that it was officially a terror attack. They left that till the last minute. Why do you think there's such a reluctance to announce that this was a terror act quickly?
It's very typical what the way the regime has been communicating on this. It was as if a self-driving truck was launched into the public yesterday. Of course, someone sat at the steering wheel, and it was most probably an Islamic terrorist. And so somewhere we see that the regime is covered up and covers up the reality and the truth, because all this, the truth, points to Madam Merkel. The truth points to the idea that the regime should be changed.
Of course, we have to point out at this point we don't yet know who is behind the attack. We don't know if it was. Yes, if it wasn't who it was. The investigations are going. But one of the interesting things has been the media reaction here. Certainly, we've been keeping an eye on the context in which this attack has been discussed by mainstream media. Let's just take a very quick listen to one of those reactions.
Is there a feeling that Chancellor Merkel got it wrong?
Well, divided. There would, of course, be those who would say she got it wrong, but I very much agree there with Gisela. It's Russia to say that. And it's really about, I mean, we have a clearly also more aggressive Russia.
Now, this has been discussed in the context of other allegations, for example, the Russian hacking, Russian meddling in elections, the new sanctions extended against Russia. This is a bit of an odd one, isn't it? 12 people are killed by a terrorist in the centre of Berlin, yet Russia still seems to be considered the #1 threat, the main enemy of Europe. Is that an adequate threat assessment, do you think?
Well, of course not, in my view. As I already pointed out, the real threat are our own politicians in power now, because they chose this path of mass immigration of Muslim people in Europe. They chose the path of vague and double-sensed indications and signs to Muslim people that are already here. They chose to open the borders and keep them open, even when people started to protest. And so what is happening is that we are now covered by a regime and politicians that should be sent home, and the real change is the way we change our politicians and our way of thinking of the problems.
As the tragedy unfolded at the Christmas market, Chancellor Merkel was actually at an awards ceremony. She was saying to the audience that we have to boost the diversity of society, that this was a positive thing, diversity. What reaction do you expect from the public after this attack?
Well, we should not expect Merkel to change her mind. We saw that in the last few years. Wir schaffen das. She continues to say so and to defend her policies, and she will continue. If we want to stop her, we should elect another chancellor in Germany. That's what I suggest that the Germans should do, and that the French should do, and the Holland people and the Flemish people should do in the next few years. To change the regime is the only way, because otherwise the existing regimes, the existing politicians in power will go on just like the Trump did.
All right, Gerald Feinemans, member of the European Parliament from the Vlaams Party of Belgium. Thanks for joining us here on RT today.
Never mind. At your service.
We'll of course be following this story and investigation throughout the day. We'll keep you up to date as that information comes in.